I have had to tell them shut up more times than I can count. The husband in the case broke into the wife's our client home, poisoned some of her food, and left. She went to the hospital and ended up being perfectly okay, thankfully. I interned for a small family law firm in Virginia last summer and had two really odd stories. One, this attractive lady came in seeking a divorce. Before divorcing, she and her husband moved into a house in the Virgin in the mountains with her parents, as they were relocating from Florida to Virginia to start their relationship over and had not found a new place to live yet. She had found his personal classified ads on Craigslist. If I remember correctly, well, crap keeps hitting the fan and he kicks her out of her parents' house. You read that correctly too. Another crazy story was surrounding a mid-40s couple now got remarried. All of their children from their respective first marriages were grown up. Anyways, they decide to adopt 3 kids from some African county. At first, they think the 2 girls and 1 boy are brother-sister, but end up being 2 sisters and a cousin. The kids had apparently seen some awful crap back in Africa. All their parents were dead or drug addicts, etc. Anyways, they all have terrible manners that they won't fix, eating with their hands at the bad hygiene, obnoxious, etc. However, the really sad part was the older girl around 11, 12 years old. She was sexually assaulted, raped in Africa, and she had become sexually reactive. This means she was masturbating all the time in public, and even once made her sister perform oral sex on her, which the mother found them doing in the bathtub. A really sad story. Told this one before, but it bears repeating and is also pretty crazy, at least in my opinion. I'm a land-using real estate lawyer, but a friend's friend is, or at least was, a divorced family lawyer. My friend once told me a story wherein my friend's divorce lawyer friend was attacked by a client's former spouse while doing his grocery shopping at a local supermarket with his wife and kids. The former spouse attacker has blamed the divorce attorney for taking him to the cleaners and for the downward spiral that followed the divorce. Last I heard, the lawyer who was assaulted in the grocery store decided to change practice areas. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Criminal lawyers often work with the worst people on their best behavior. Family lawyers often work with the best people on their worst behavior. Divorce lawyers of her did what is the most insane, evil, funny, dumb where spouse has tried to screw the other. Even but work in the court system. One's case that came in was a couple divorcing on mutual terms. The husband had 1 child with her, and the wife had a child from the previous marriage. He agreed to pay child support for both children. I guess he really cared about this other enough to support her, even though it isn't his obligation. The judge signs the order. They go to set up the child support account, and it gets kicked back, saying you can't have 2 accounts for 1 child. Turns out she's been collecting child support from the biological father the entire time and never told him. She basically tried to milk 2 fathers for 1 child, and the other attorney knew about it. Here in Canada, a kid can legally have up to 4 individuals responsible for paying his or her child support. There was a court case a few years ago where a lady tried to change that law and have the number up to 5. Not my case, but during my first year of law school, lawyers from different practices came to give us a peek behind the curtain of different areas. The divorce lawyer told the story of rather well-to-do couple that spend months and months, and men are tens of thousands of dollars, fighting over absolutely everything, all the way down to a single ceramic ashtray. He couldn't remember the significance, but somehow it had come through the husband's family, even after everything else had been decided. They spent many more months and nearly $100,000 fighting over just this ashtray. Then, after a court hearing, the wife finally won the ashtray. She promptly strode out to the white courthouse steps and smashed the ceramic ashtray, left the pieces all over for the husband to see on his way out. Decided that day I would not be a divorce lawyer. TLDR spent $100 K to win an ashtray, only to smash it in spite. I think you made a good decision after reading all these answers. Once had a boss who had to leave his house for 6 hours while his ex-wife grabbed all the belongings she was legally entitled to. When he returned home, every knob and handle was gone. Door knobs, cabinet handles, drawer handles, anything that was screwed onto something and used to open it she had taken every day for the next week. He would occasionally yell out she took the fricking knobs. My friend's mom did the sween. She found out her husband was cheating. In addition, all the light bulbs and toilet paper, even the light bulb in the fridge. She knew he would come home from work in the evening and have to figure out what was going on. I am an interpreter who works frequently with police and lawyers. The most out there thing I ever interpreted in court went like this. Miss So-and-so, we know each other for a long time. Correct, yes. As a matter of fact, we have known each other for 5 years. Correct, yes. And at the end of each and every meeting we had during the past 5 years, we always agreed on one thing correct. Yes. Please tell the judge what we agree on. It's not okay to break in my ex's apartment and lick all his cutlery. Yet here we are. Miss So, and so I died. This made me giggle and is a welcome respite from all the dog killing and child molestation accusations. Thank you. I didn't handle a divorce. I handled parts of the aftermath. In the divorce, she went AWOL, was living in a truck somewhere and just couldn't handle it mentally. He gave her 5 of his 9 companies. They were the ones that owed 7 figures in payroll taxes. He had made her the bookkeeper on paper. She spent decades trying to shake the IRS for the results. I'm a lawyer, but I've had a very limited amount of experience in divorce cases. The first case I ever worked, the husband shaved, waxed every single hair off his body in an attempt to avoid a court-mandated drug test. We had a guy at work do this, shave his whole body, raise a burn on the back of his neck, cut up his elbows. He was a hairy dude. Then he failed the urine test. I asked him why he went to all that trouble, and he said, I don't know. I was high. Still, when you're all about to go through a divorce, don't clean out the accounts and hide the money. Grab your pets and put them in a safe place where nobody will ever find them until the divorce is all long over. As soon-to-be ex-husband left his wife's prize coit to die on the doorstep of their house. Apparently, the value of these fish sticks in total was over $100,000. She was, according to her lawyer, so distraught that she couldn't be in court, only in law articled at a Fair Emily law firm, thankfully moved on, since worst I saw was a decades-long case. Husband had been in a motorcycle accident, suffered brain damage, has severely limited capacity going forward, got a huge settlement. Afterwards, wife spent the next several years stealing the entirety of the guy's money and property, variously by forging his signature or putting documents in front of him that he couldn't understand, and telling him they were something benign so he'd sign it. She then forged a bunch of letters from a tax authority and convinced him he was about to go to jail, and further convinced him to flee the country. He finally came back several years later to find out everything he owned was in her name, and one of the documents he was told to sign the divorce papers. Dude got left with nothing. I moved on before I found out how the story ended. Hopefully it ends with her dying a slow, painful death. Not my divorce. But my divorce lawyer told me about a case she was involved in where both clients were so petty that they had to all meet to argue over literally every single scrap of everything. The final object that neither would settle on was a ceramic rabbit statue, a really generic one from home, Depot or whatever, 0 sentimental value. But since it was a final item, neither side wanted to lose the last thing, and they dragged it out over 3 separate meetings for this one thing. I don't remember which ended up getting it, but once they settled it and signed everything, the winning party stuck it on their lawyer's desk as a gift and walked out. They must have felt so cool yet looked so stupid. Friend was going through divorce from insane husband. He had been texting her pics of the gunk he bought and threatening her. Police were called. Nothing they could do because it was only a picture. He was staying with a secret girlfriend. At this point, she allowed him to go get his stuff from the house. She was scared to go back in the house alone. I went with her. First red flag was he had changed the locks, so we waited for locksmith to open the house and change the locks again. Well, when the door opens, we noticed all the furniture was gone, so he carefully went upstairs in search of her cats. The entire second floor was empty. No cats, no furniture. Even her clothes were gone. Come to find out, he hired a moving company to pack and take everything, even the food in the fridge. Finally found the cats. He had taken them to another vet in town and put them up for boarding under his sister's name, thinking she would not be able to find them. He was finally forced to disclose what happened to her possessions. He had them taken to a storage unit far away from the home. I can't believe I'm saying this, but relative to the amount of animal abuse and the rest of this thread, I'm glad he didn't try to kill the cats. Divorce lawyer here. Spouse had been out of the house for weeks. She waited until he was on a business trip, came into the house, turned on all of the faucets, plugged the drains, turned off the furnace, and left it. It was minus 10 degrees. He came back 5 days later. The house was ruined, the water frozen, cracked the foundation. I'm guessing no insurance or insurance didn't cover a deliberate act of damage or something. I'm not a divorce lawyer, but my parents got divorced about a year ago. My mom didn't want my dad to show up in court because he would contest, and then they'd have to split the assets. She phoned me and told me to put laxatives in his food, so he wouldn't be able to make it. They had a client whose wife wanted him out of the house. I told him not to leave, just move to a different bedroom for the time being, because once he was out, the chances of him ever getting back in was slim. He texted his wife and told her he was staying in the house. She called back and left a van that she wanted him out, and if he wasn't out soon, she would start taking out her unhappiness on the children and would remind the children that mommy was being mean to them because daddy wouldn't leave. 101 on how to lose custody. I don't practice divorce law, but I did an internship with a family law judge in law school that involved me sitting on a lot of stuff. One divorced couple came in because the ex-husband wanted to lower his spousal support payments due to his lowered income, great financial responsibilities, and the fact that his ex-wife was declining to seek paid employment, all of which sounds reasonable on the face. It turned out that while his income had been lowered due to cuts, his new wife, who technically worked as his assistant and had done so prior to the divorce, was now making quadruple her salary, more than he ever had. He claimed that his ex-wife hadn't paid renters living with her and could have money to survive if she charged him rent. It turned out they were the couple's shared 18-year-old twins who were living at home having just graduating high school and were going to keep living at home while starting college in the fall. It also later turned out that he allowed his stepdaughter and her 2 children to live with him and his wife rent-free and paid for her college. His ex-wife produced evidence that he told his own kids to figure out paying for college themselves. He claimed that his ex-wife worked as a nanny for free by choice and should be getting paid for work elsewhere. The kids she watched for free were their 3 joint grandchildren from their eldest child, 2 of which were severely disabled. He claimed that when he married his new wife, he gained over 15 new dependents, which was technically true if those dependents were all in Mexico and included his new wife's grown siblings and their families, none of whom he had ever met. This dude was shocked when spousal support wasn't decreased. He's trying to bleed his ex-wife dry, not realizing he's being bled dry by the new one. LOL, my dad is a divorce attorney. His clients couldn't decide who would get the Labrador puppies from a new litter they just breed. The pups are worth $1,000 a pop. Well, they also hadn't been up to date on their payments. So Dad brought a litter of 8 floppy puppies home as collar for us to have until they could negotiate the settlement. So much fun for us kids. TL Doctor. My client's spouse accused him of giving his deceased wife cancer. I represented a guy who was on his second marriage. His first wife passed away from cancer. He and his kids were obviously devastated. My client was a pretty sensitive guy with a big heart. His second wife could be very charming, which was why he fell for her, but it was all a facade anyway. To make a long story about a lengthy divorce short, my client met a very kind and affectionate woman during his case. They really took off and were basically engaged. Even though his divorce was far from over, the fancy started having health problems and was diagnosed with a form of terminal cancer. Somehow the second wife found out about this and tried to use the cancer diagnosis against my client in court. She developed this crazy theory that my client had killed his first wife by giving her cancer, and that he was doing the same thing to his fiancée. The second wife's attorney, who was quite good, refused to be a party to it. The attorney never addressed the argument in court, and didn't even ask the second wife any questions about it during testimony. Rather, the attorney informed the judge that the second wife wished to address the court directly about an issue. The judge allowed her to do so in a highly irregular move. The second wife told her crazy conspiracy theory to the judge, adding that she was certain my client had tried to give her cancer at some point as well. I wish I had an artist's rendering of the scene, capturing the second wife's crazy eyes, her attorney's look of shame embarrassment, the judge's look of confusion, ennui, and my look of or inspired as gust. Poor guy, though, having two loved ones get terminal cancer. I was an assistant for a family law practice, not a lawyer, so it was already a disaster of a divorce because the ex-husband was a dong. But it got so much worse when the wife started dating someone new with a severe cat allergy, like a year after they split up. Her side co-ex brought a cat on his time with the kids, except he's not allowed pets at his apartment. He sends the kids back to their mom's house with a cat and all its stuff. Moma's be because she didn't want a cat at all. Plus her boyfriend is crazy allergic. She calls us asking what to do because her kids are bawling, saying that she can't get rid of their new sibling, and she has the cat in the garage. Ex told kids, if mommy loves you, she'll let you keep the cat, since daddy is not allowed cats at his house. Paralegal for divorce lawyer. This one is morbid. We represented a guy who believed vehemently that his wife was assaulting the children. The authorities were involved. Child services was involved. It was never clear what the truth was or if anything at all was going on, but our client was sure. He shot his wife dead at a custody exchange in front of the children. He then sat down and waited for the authorities. We visited him in jail with his criminal defense attorney. As we were leaving, he told me, "Well, I guess the divorce is over now," and he laughed. This was the first time I had ever been speechless. I can't really reveal details or context here, but I can safely say that defending this action as heroic or understandable is an incorrect takeaway. There are no heroes here. The trauma this man put the children through is incredibly selfish, regardless of his intentions. There are so many other options that could have been explored, many of which were being explored when this happened. He abruptly put an end to all of them, making the truth forever impossible to discern. Where are they now? The children are in the custody of a family member. They are safe and well, although will no doubt need extensive therapy as they get elder guys in jail. I'm unsure of his final sentence, however. I doubt he will ever leave. What did the kids say? Forensic interviews are super confidential, and this case didn't have the chance to go to a hearing. However, after multiple interviews with both children and the parents, neither the police, child services guardian ad litem, or child advocate recommended that the mother lose custody or visitation, nor did they require it to be supervised. All of these matters were going when the mother died. Frick, I should have stopped reading this thread once I got to the parents, who were saving alimony money for the other in case of emergency. She accused her ex-husband of physically shaming their children while under the watchful eye of the nationally endorsed social workers who oversaw his contact with them, which was only required because he didn't have his own private accommodation at the time. She also said that his Indian flatnets were inherently dirty. After the obviously false child physically schmaling suggestion, I warned her of the consequences of being caught lying about that. That is permanent loss of custody. She fired me, but kept calling back, using fake names to try and obtain free advice, which contradicted my advice. But everyone she called immediately spotted her. This was a long time ago, and now I specialize in insurance litigation, which is far less ugly. Do you know what happened afterwards? Did she lose custody? Paralegal for a divorce lawyer here. Our client told us he didn't clear out the marital account after the parties filed, which technically is true because while he removed $45,000, he left about $3.50 in there, disappointed that I didn't see any reference to the Loch Ness Monster yet. I worked at a computer repair store as a sales technician. Had a guy come in with a desktop that he wanted Windows reinstalled. I asked him if he wanted me to back up all of his data first, and he told me that he had everything he wanted and just did the wipe. I put it in the queue, and he paid and left. I started about an hour later. Since an XP install was only about 45 minutes off the network, I didn't bother doing anything else except deleting the original partition and making a new one and installing Windows. About an hour after that, his wife came running and asking if we had a computer with Smith as the last name. I told her I did, and she showed me her and said that her husband brought it in to try and destroy all the proof of him cheating and stealing money from their business. When she asked if I had wiped everything yet, I told her I just did a Windows install and didn't actually really wipe anything. I called her husband and told him the situation. I told him his wife was here to get the computer. He asked me if I reinstalled Windows like we spoke about, and I told him I had. He told me, "I don't give a crap, give her the computer. There isn't anything left on it anyway." I said, "All rights," and hung up. I told her that he said I could give it to her and then explained to her how reinstalling Windows doesn't magically delete everything, and explained to her how I could recover all of her files in a couple of hours. I ended up staying late that night, and she bought me pizza and Mountain Dew. I ended up recovering every file he tried to have me destroy and made multiple copies for her. She ended up calling him from the store and reading off some of the messages he had tried to delete from his emails. I was worried that he might try to come back in and confront me, but nothing else ever came of it. Very cute of her to bring you pizza and Mountain Dew. Husband and wife divorce after husband finds out wife is sending obscene texts to other guys. He goes into a deep depression. They didn't have much, lots of debt, and 2 dogs. One was a dog he had had since before the marriage. He got her. The other dog was only about 3 years old and was bought to keep the older 7-year-old dog company while they worked. The wife demanded that since he got his dog, that she got the other. He is depressed and just wants to move on, so he agrees. She gets the dog and has it put down the next day. She didn't want the dog. She just wanted to hurt him. This one hits close to home because it happened between my parents. We had a family friend who was a lawyer, and my parents agreed that he would be the lawyer for both of them as a mediator. So as the assets were being divided, my dad got absolutely slammed. She was going to get the house, cars, half his retirement, and an insane amount of alimony to the tune of like $2,500 a month for the rest of her life. My dad has a good job as a municipal employee, but that was probably 70%ish off his paycheck. Turns out that my moment, the family friend actually conspired to rip my dad off and make it seem like that what a divorce settlement looks like, and she was going to kick back more money under the table after the dust had settled. Dad just didn't know how these things worked, so after some convincing, he finally went out and got his own lawyer. He got a very fair divorce settlement after that. Mom still to this day can't understand why we don't talk to her much. That other attorney could be disbarred for that personal experiments. Unbeknownst to me, my ex having an affair. I worked a lot of hours, so I didn't pick up on it. We had always dreamed of buying a house on a huge local lake to retire in. We literally started shopping for houses, and even to radio a dozen, or so we found too well within our budget. But with need to sell our house first, my wife convinced me to take out a couple loans in my name and get a couple credit cards, again in my name. Most of the bills were in hers and the mortgage was in hers, so I did. I spent about $25K in CC and loans to fully update our house and get it ready for market. As soon as the work was done, she told me she was leaving me and wanted to sell the house. But dang, did she get the house or is it still ongoing? The most malicious thing I know of personally involved a co-worker of mine. He was sleeping with a married woman, and ultimately the husband found out she was having an affair. Really ugly divorce ensues, during which they fought over a lot of assets, build a real point of contention with their dog, lovely GSD named Ryan. Eventually, husband gets custody of the dog, and in under a month, as the dog put down just to hurt her back for the affair. When I posted this, I thought the situation was a rarity and have shock and awe value from the cruelty at work. After reading the responses in this thread, not only am I saddened by how many pets get caught in the crossfire, but I am genuinely shocked by the lengths some people will go for petty vengeance.